Emin Sabitoglu is one of the great composers of Azerbaijani music. Mahmudov Emin Sabitoglu was born on November 2nd, 1937, in the family of Sabit Rahman, a prominent Azerbaijani playwright, honored art worker, author of stories such as Shirin Bulbul, Gudurgan, Mir Gasim, plays such as Vafasiz and Son Faciə. Emin Sabitoglu's mother is Ismet Iravanski. Ismet is the granddaughter of the last Iravan Khan, Huseyngulu Khan. Mehdi Iravanski was Ismet Hanum's uncle. Emin Sabitoglu entered Gara Garayev's class at the conservatory in 1954 after graduating from music school. 2 years later, he was transferred to the Moscow State Conservatory named after Tchaikovsky in the composition class of Yuri Shopori. Emin Sabitoglu is the author of many Azerbaijani classical music that we have listened to and loved since childhood. Emin Sabitoglu, considered one of our genius classics in the history of Azerbaijani music after Uzeyir Hajibeyov, was famous in the whole post-Soviet space. The composer wrote 1 symphony, 3 symphonic poems, 3 cantatas, a string quartet, a poem for violin and piano. However, several music genres are the basis and defining part of his work. Emin Sabitoglu is especially famous for his music for Azerbaijani films. He has composed more than 600 songs, 9 musical comedies, and music for about 40 films.
Ki doymamışdı heç visalından, mənə zülm eylədi yaman ayrılıq. Nə olardı bir gün durub yuxudan, görəydim ki olur yalan ayrılıq. Mən görəndə orada yaz səridi, xoş nəfəs baharın küləkləridir. Mən görəndə orada yaz səhəridir, xoş nəfəs baharın küləkləridir. Açılan ağbadam çiçəkləridir. İndi onlardımı solan ayrılıq, ayrılıq, ayrılıq, aman ayrılıq. Mənə zülm elədi yaman ayrılıq, ayrılıq, ayrılıq, aman ayrılıq. Mənə zülm elədi yaman ayrılıq.
Emin Sabitoglu was a unique composer in Azerbaijani art. Emin Sabitoglu was one of the rare composers whose songs have an absolute harmony between melody and text. Emin Sabitoglu could write symphonies, operettas, and songs. He was a real composer. This is what friends of art say about the work of the famous composer Emin Sabitoglu. He is remembered as the author of songs that left their mark on the history of 20th century Azerbaijani music, gave listeners many favorite and unforgettable songs, and enriched our lives. Emin Sabitoglu's interest in great art had family ties. Prominent playwright Sabit Rahman was born in his family. He studied at a special music school. He chose music as his art because he expressed his thoughts more accurately in the language of music. When he was 7 years old, he was placed in the piano class of Professor Kövkap Safaraliyeva at the Bulbul Music School. Since the age of 13, he has been participating in Midhat Ahmadov's composition classes. While still in the 8th grade, he wrote his first piece of music. After graduating from high school in 1954, he entered the composition department of the Azerbaijani State Conservatory, named after Uzeyir Hajibeyov. He's been studying in the class of prominent composer Gara Garayev for 2 years. His first symphony and chamber works introduced him as a talented composer. In one of his articles, People's Artist Firengiz Alizadeh said, "In the 60s, Emin Mahmudov was an assistant to the great composer Gara Garayev's class. Most of Emin Sabitoglu's works are songs. In the harmonious unity of the song, the composer created rare pearls of the song genre, such as Çiçek Yağışı, Uzak Yaşıl Ada, İnsaf da yaxşı şeydir, Ah dedim, Dərelər, Ah çiçek, Sahildə, Gilavar, Mavidir, Kəpənək, Bakı sabahın xeyir, Bəlkə də." We remember his name. Those songs, sung by such famous singers as Şövkət Ələkbərova, Mirza Babayev, Xadica Abbasova, Hüseynağa Hadiyev, Flora Kərimova, Yalçın Rzazadə, enchanted people's hearts. Thus, about 500 songs by Emin Sabitoglu were included in his work. The number of songs written to words of people's poet of Azerbaijan, Vagif Samadoglu alone, is more than 100. Performed by Akif İslamzadeh, composed by Emin Sabitoglu, Ala Gözlüm. Performed by the composer himself, Aman Ayrılıq. Bizim Cəbiş müəllim. The famous waltz he composed for the film. The song he composed for the longing for the homeland while living in Istanbul. Payız gəldi. Songs. Ad günü. Ölsəm bağışla. Gün keçdi. Həm ziyarət, həm ticarət. Təxminə və zaur. Qanlı zəmi. Bəyin oğurlanması. Emin Sabitoglu, who composed the music for his films, wrote his name in golden letters in Azerbaijani art. The strength of Azerbaijani art is that our composers, in contact with world art, have never forgotten their roots and have innovatively interpreted European forms based on national traditions. It's enough to remember mugam operas, symphonic mugams, operettas, musical ghazals, which benefit from the aesthetics of field performances. Emin Sabitoglu was one of them. He created our classical music in European forms based on national roots. Emin Sabitoglu was also unique because in his songs the composer presented the image of a modern Azerbaijani as city dweller, intellectually, spiritually rich, inwardly free, independent person in his music. Emin Sabitoglu's music was the inner voice of the Azerbaijani man in the 1960s who had no communication with the free world in Soviet captivity. Emin Sabitoglu was able to modulate from we to I in his song. In other words, by looking at the inner world of each person individually, he was able to reveal his unique individuality. In fact, this factor was a unique phenomenon in Soviet society, which had severed ties with the Western world, where individualism had not developed and which had not been able to discover its own individual qualities. Emin Sabitoglu, with his devotion to the motherland, his unique creativity is engraved in golden letters in the history of Azerbaijani culture and art and will live forever in the hearts of Azerbaijani people. Emin Sabitoglu died on November the 18th, 2000 in the city of Baku. Emin Sabitoglu was buried in the Alley of Honors.